Well, good day to you. It is November the 13th. Lucky 13 out there. I hope you guys are having a great day. My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. And as I always like to do, just kind of point out to those people who don't know anything about this information and want to know more, that the best thing to do is to read more about this information for yourself and do some study and do some research. I've included some links that take you to websites that give you really good free background information about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, about his priorities. And then you can read more about it. You can get some better background information, perhaps even have some better questions to ask me if you want to ask me a question. But it at least will give you a sense of this, whether this information is true for you. And that's why I always recommend everyone to check it out. You want to come back and join the discussion? Let me know what you think. Post a comment. I'll discuss it from time to time, like I'm about to discuss a few comments that came my way. If you want to ask me a question, post your question in the comments section or email me that question to searchforsigns@mail.com. And Luis Sosa went on a commenting tirade here. I did want to discuss a few of them. I don't need to go through every single one of them. It doesn't really matter. But I typically don't comment when somebody doesn't agree with what I have to say and they comment and say whatever they say. I just kind of leave it up and whatever. As long as it's respectful and not disrespectful to me or somebody else, I don't really care. But I did want to touch on a couple things. One, he said, you don't present a single bit of evidence of the existence of Maitreya. Let's talk about that one first, and I'll bring in the second one. And Luis, if you're listening to this, you're 100% correct. I am not, nor have I ever presented a single bit of evidence about the existence of Maitreya. That's why I always encourage everyone at the beginning of nearly every video to check out this information for yourself, read more about it for yourself, and then you can, then and only then will you see if there's any truth to this. Now, I've had some personal experiences with Maitreya. Some are quite extraordinary that lead me to have little or no doubt about the existence of Maitreya. And the only thing I can do is tell you about it, and then you can either believe me or not. It doesn't really matter. But I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. I'm only here to just tell you about Maitreya and let you decide what you want to do for yourself. And this goes for everybody. Even if I had the evidence to present to any one of you, you would still probably not believe it if you weren't ready to believe it. I will say this too. I say this with a hopeful yet solemn heart about this, that for those who have heard this information, whether you've done anything with it or not, when you see Maitreya and you recognize Maitreya on TV, it will be a shock. Because there'll be a part of you, and probably even for me too, that it's so outstanding and so extraordinary in its scope that it will be shocking because it's almost like it's like a surreal reality. But Maitreya is real. These masters are real. They've been in our lives and helping us ever since the dawn of time. Now they're coming back into the everyday world to teach humanity and direct and guide humanity and help humanity directly. That's it. And we'll know more about them in the future. Most of us have totally forgotten about the information of the masters because it's been lifetimes since we've seen these masters. Little has been written about them. And what's been written down is in such a distorted way that it makes it very hard to understand the truth of these masters. That's why I always encourage everyone to check out Benjamin Creme or Alice Bailey or Helena Blavatsky, because those three are the ones who have the clearest and most accurate information about these masters. But it's still relatively new. It's still totally unknown to the vast majority of humanity. And even if I presented evidence to any one of you guys, you wouldn't believe it. I swear to you would not believe it. That's why it's always best for you to realize the truth for you in your own way. I didn't believe it when I first heard this information, and now look at me. In fact, I didn't like it. The first time I read Benjamin Creme's book, I didn't like his book. Was going to return the book, and now look at me. But it's taken me a while. I've had to do my own research and see if there's any truth to this and those kind of things. But I only provide proof about two things. One is about the existence of the many miracle signs, which at the beginning and the end of every video, I have images of those miracles. But you can also go to the Share International site and read more about it there. That's why I always encourage you to check that site out. But I also provide, I think, historical evidence of the proof of how the principle of sharing will work out. Because Maitreya says, without sharing, there will be no justice. Without justice, there will be no peace. And without peace, there will be no future. I have a historical evidence that's true. It's not hypothetical. If you look at the Marshall Plan, and I talk about this all the time, if you've never heard one of these videos, I talk about it in nearly every video. It's that important. And is because the sharing is the only way to bring about justice. And justice is the only way to bring about peace. That's the only way. And right now, our future's on the line if we do not manifest peace on this planet. That's the whole point. And we won't do anything about it until we realize that truth, that our very existence as a humanity depends on whether we try and implement the principle of sharing. If we do that, we will have a future for ourselves, our kids, and our children's children, and our children's children's children, and so on. If we do not, we will end life on this planet. We'll have to start over on somewhere else. But the proof is in the Marshall Plan, which was a little known, and for most people, even less cared for fact about human history, or U.S. history. But somewhere right after World War II, George C. Marshall and some of his group came up with a plan to help Europe out after World War II. It's called the Marshall Plan, where we gave excesses of resources that we had and gave it to Europe to help rebuild Western Europe. They then paid back what they took. And it was a very simple way, but it was a form of sharing. And the nations that participated in the Marshall Plan have not been violent toward one another. Those nations have a bit of goodwill amongst each other. And it's not true to say that historically that there was goodwill on those between those nations. It started after the Marshall Plan, actually. And none of those nations have attacked one another. So I always end the discussion about the Marshall Plan like this. I always try to pose this question for everyone to think about. It's quite, when it comes to the Marshall Plan, if the Marshall Plan did bring about goodwill and trust amongst those nations, what would have happened instead of the United States just trying it for 4 years with a handful of nations, did it with every nation on the planet back then, and then didn't stop? You know what I'm saying? So even though we stopped the Marshall Plan, we still trust those nations better than we trust any other nation on the planet. But what if we had never stopped? What if we tried it with Russia at the time? Would we have still had a Cold War? Would we have entered, the Korean War, and then have entered Vietnam? And then would we have had, the problems in the Middle East and 9/11? Would we have had those, conflicts? Or would we have been living in a more peaceful time? And you can research the Marshall Plan and answer that question for yourself. We would be living in a totally different world today. One where nations trust one another, where there isn't this division, where there isn't this strife and conflict amongst nations in this way. It would have brought about peace. It would have, because it did. And like Jesus said in the Bible, a tree is known by its fruit. The fruit of the principle of sharing is nothing less than peace. It's true. And the Pax Americana policy that's in place today, that everybody promises will bring peace and security to the United States and fuck the rest of the world, will never, ever, 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 ever bring about peace. It will only do exactly what it's already done, which is bring about terrorism, war, economic and political divisions, distrust, hatred, all that kind of stuff. That's the only thing that's going to ever manifest, because that's all it's ever done. We are, as a people, are insane, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's exactly what we are doing today. So Maitreya is going to suggest to humanity that we try the principle of sharing and see what happens. But anyway, thank you very much for that. And in terms of the critical thinking part, you say these people don't know, or have not known, and will never know critical thinking. How can you say that? I don't expect people to follow me. People don't just follow me from what I'm saying. I'm not that special or that magnetic or charismatic. I encourage everyone to do your own research. That's critical thinking, Luis. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people are taking me up on my advice and doing that. And a lot of people are seeing that there's no truth to this for themselves, and that's fine. Other people are, and they might not be doing anything with it now. They might see that there might be some truth to this. So that's why I always discuss about it and encourage everyone to check out these other sites. So if it was just about me and following what I have to say, and I'm the only one that can tell you what's going on, then yeah, I could see where you're coming from. But there's no truth to that. First part, not providing evidence, absolutely agree with. The second part, do not agree with it at all. But anyway, but very much thank you for the comment nonetheless. All right. Let's see. James, Yeshua is my savior. Thanks for coming on my channel on Sunday, Gary. Had a great interview. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, James. And if you want to hear the interview, I have posted a link to that interview on that channel. And this gentleman has a channel. He's trying to get going. He doesn't have a lot of views on his channel, which is fine, right? I know what that's like. But I will tell you this about James is he was, even though he probably doesn't agree with what I'm saying, or at least the majority of what I'm saying, he was open-minded enough to let me come on his channel, and I respect that immensely. And I encourage everyone to check out what he has to say and hopefully subscribe to his channel and all that kind of stuff. But, it's refreshing to go on a channel or just be have a conversation with somebody that has an open mind. And I think, James, you do. And you're a gracious host, and I really do respect everything you're doing. And even though we see things differently, I do respect you immensely for what you do. Thank you so much for that. But what's your question, Mr. James? What's up, Gary? I had a question. I know you always answer on the next video, so you can respond. That is cool. Is Benjamin Creme's master Sanat Kumara? In your opinion, I know you said Ben never gave his name. This part is not an opinion. He's not his master. I know that for a fact. Okay, so we don't know who Sanat Kumara is really. Most people have never really heard about that, and the information that most people would read online or in various books is there's not a lot of truth to who and what Sanat Kumara is. I would say the closest that I would say that would have the closest to who and what he is would be in the Alice Bailey books. I'm not clear if Helena Roerich or Helena Blavatsky talked about Sanat Kumara, but it doesn't really matter. The Ageless Wisdom Teachings teach that we make up the cosmic life that we call God. We're a part of this, like a body, like a physical body. We make that up. We're not separate from that God. And every part of life has a soul to it. And whether it's the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, human kingdom, and then beyond this, right? And even every planet and every solar system has a soul that ensouls that planet. Our planet is no different. Our planet has a logos. So when Jesus talked about the plan of God, he was talking about the plan of the logos of this planet. When these masters talk about the plan of God, they're talking about the plans of the logos that ensouls this planet, the one in whom we live and move and have our being, as Paul once wrote. But Sanat Kumara is an intermediary between the planetary logos and humanity. He's one of the 7 great Kumars in our solar system. Most don't live on this planet. He's the only one, and he's resided here for about 18.5 million years. And it's been said through the Alice Bailey teachings by one of these masters, if it wasn't for the impact of his influence on humanity, we would still be cavemen to this day. So that's how profound of an influence he's had on humanity, just by his presence here. A tremendous being, a very pure, and we can't really, and consciousness and that kind of thing. Far more advanced than even Maitreya would be. And it was also said by this master that the difference between conscious levels between Sanat Kumara and a ordinary master is the same between an ordinary master and early animal man. That's the difference in quality. So an early animal man, right, they just lived probably within a mile of where they were born and never ventured out farther than that. That's the extent of their knowledge of the world. They didn't know anything about themselves, anything in their life and anything like that. They had a very limited technology and limited intelligence about their technology. Couldn't read, couldn't write. And it was all about their own innate desires and instincts. That was probably how I would describe animal man. The only difference between animal man and an animal is an animal man would still have directed purpose like humanity, where a animal, even a domesticated animal, does not have directed will or purpose. But the difference in consciousness between animal man and even us is just tremendous, right? We couldn't relate to them if we could go back in time. They wouldn't be able to live in our society. They wouldn't know how to function, right? So the difference between them And a master, and even a difference between a master and average humanity is tremendous. The vision that a master has, the love that the master has, the influence of the mere energy and presence of just an ordinary master that just became a master, a little bit above Jesus when he was in Palestine, a little bit above Leonardo da Vinci when he was alive. Full of creativity, full of joy, full of knowledge and wisdom, right? Imagine that being the same as an animal man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the difference. So there's no way that he could work with and overshadow somebody like Ben. Ben was an extraordinary man in his own right, but he would not be able to withstand that kind of overshadowing like that. If you want to know Ben's master, everybody wants to know Ben's master's name. It doesn't really matter. It's not important. And there's a reason why Ben's master didn't want his name revealed. And he didn't want people to be devoted to him. These masters don't, and Maitreya don't desire devotees. They don't desire people feeling any kind of devotion to them. They just want you to look at the information. They're very pragmatic in that way. Eventually, we will know who Ben's master is after he's introduced by Maitreya. But the only thing that Ben said and was able to say was he is a senior member of the hierarchy, and his name is well known in esoteric circles. So look to the Alice Bailey books and read about the masters. He's one of them. But we don't know which one. You know, and it's funny, a little side note, at the beginning of this book, Initiation Human and Solar, which was Alice Bailey's first book that she wrote, or the Master DK wrote through Alice Bailey, was Initiation Human and Solar, where he wrote about the masters, about initiation, about the many rays, and all that kind of stuff. It's an extraordinary book in its own right, but he only wanted to be referred to as the Tibetan. He didn't want to be referred to by his name. She screwed up. I can't remember what book it was. I think it was a letter she was writing to one of his disciples in the book Discipleship in the New Age, and she slipped up and she referred to him as Dwalkul, and then the cat was out of the bag. So that's the only reason why we know that it was the Master DK who worked through Alice Bailey. He didn't even want to know he didn't want his name being revealed either. So, but I can assure you it's not Sanat Kumara. You know, the names that she referred to in Initiation Human Solar, the Master Jesus, the Master Rikuzi, the Master Hilarion, who was the Apostle Paul, the Master Moria, who was the Apostle Peter, Kuthumi, who was the Apostle John, and Pythagoras, the Master DK, Dwalkul, who worked through Alice Bailey, and some other masters, and then the Master Rikuzi, like I said, who was Comte Saint Germain. Was it one of those masters? Probably more than likely, but we don't know who. And like I said, it doesn't really matter. But it's a good question nonetheless. But anyway, thank you very much. All right, now the next question coming from Alit Boazu. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I have a question. Donald Trump got to be an advanced individual since he is so influential. I remember reading something Benjamin Creme said about Hitler. He was a second-degree initiate when he died. But what I don't understand is how can they behave the way they do when they apparently are so advanced? Okay, so I'm going to talk about this in a couple different ways. I'll talk about it with Hitler being a second-degree initiate, who and what I think Donald Trump is, and is he advanced or not? And then why do people who are advanced, like you're talking about, like even in the artistic realm, right? Like Picasso was not a nice guy, but yet he was a tremendous genius in his own way, right? His work will be remembered for hundreds of years after he's dead. He's still influencing artists to this day, right? Why was he such a mean person? I mean, and that boils down to what's called glamour. They're not seeing the world for what it is. They're seeing it in Ben's master described it like this: anything that we think of, view, or have a perception of where we are separate from anything else is glamour. And then it all starts from there. And these people who you're referring to, like Hitler, or I'm referring to Picasso or whatever, being an advanced person, when they have the little glamour, it's pronounced because they're almost becoming a master. They're very close to being a master, just a few lifetimes from being a master. So it's much more pronounced in them. Where we all suffer from the same glamour, right? The same pettiness, the same vindictiveness, the same prejudices, all those kind of things. That's why when you read something like, I remember reading some of the writings of Thomas Jefferson, who was a brilliant Renaissance man, right? He was at the same point in evolution as Hitler, the same point in evolution as Picasso, same point in evolution as Kennedy, and yet had this kind of dual nature to him, where he did this incredible work, and then he also did other things. You know what I mean? And if you judged him based on that, you'd be like, the guy is bipolar or something, or whatever. But he was going through the same motions that everybody has to go through in order to be a master. Suffering from the illusions, suffering from all that stuff that they all have to do. We are all going to have to go through the same thing. Fortunately for us, who are not that level yet, and will eventually be at that level, we will get there when the masters are already out open in the world. So it will be easier for us. We'll see how it's like. We'll learn how to love. We'll see what it's like to be a master. We'll have a totally different framework of life than those people who are getting all this and discovering all this in the dark. You know, Picasso might not have been the way he was had the masters been out in the world. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out as a theory, right? Now, Hitler was a whole different ball of wax. You know, Hitler was used by two members of the Dark Lodge, which are masters like the Masters of Wisdom. They're remnants of the old the previous solar system, where involution was the highest form of spirituality, but they're devoid of love. We call them the forces of evil. But he was obsessed by them. That's how he got his power. And Ben's master said that the karma which is severe, that Hitler himself has to work off, was not from the evil things that he did, the Holocaust and those kind of trying to take over the world and all the deaths and all that stuff. That all rests on the shoulders of those two dark lords that work through him. They have to work through that karma for themselves, because they were the ones that were responsible for it. His karma is he allowed himself to be used by them. But he will still have to work off his karma, just as Donald Trump has to work off his karma, just as I have to work off the karma that I've generated in this life, and you, and so forth, right? And it just depends on how much we have to work off, right? Now, Donald Trump is not that advanced. I do think that Donald Trump is being used by the same forces of darkness that did work through Hitler, but at a lesser level. That's what's giving him his power. And the reason why I think that that what I'm saying is true is because Ben's master said that about George W. Bush, and his administration. They were very much used by the forces of darkness. They were communicating to him, and he was thinking he was hearing God talking to them, to him. And then it boils down to what Paul said. Even an angel can disguise himself even the Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. I always screw that verse up. Not that they were masquerading as angels, but they were kind of in a way. But he thought that he was doing the highest good, and it was the worst thing that you could possibly do. Attack an innocent nation, kill millions of people. He did that. George Bush did that, thinking that he was doing God's work. You know what I'm saying? Even Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. He was thinking he was doing the highest good out there for the Lord himself, and yet it's the most selfish thing that he was doing, and the most destructive thing that he was doing, which is the Satan in that whole part of it, right? So to turn it on to Donald Trump, if you watch videos of Donald Trump when he was young, they're totally different. It's an energetic difference. It's crazy. If you look at it, it's different. If you look at George W. Bush when he was president, especially when he was talking about the war, and he was giving this, whether it was a State of the Union or he was giving a White House or a Oval Office press conference or whatever it was, right? Watch those videos and then watch a video of him now when he's talking about painting. It's two totally different people. Donald Trump even looks different than he did. I know he's older, but he looks different than he did, 20, 30, 40 years ago. They look like two totally different people. He sounds different. His speech patterns are different. But I think that's what's giving him his power, and that's what's giving him his influence. It's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just a real estate investor or, tycoon or whatever it is, or, from New York, who had tremendous ambition, had a huge ego, and is willing to do whatever it can to be, adored. And that's really who he is. And he's a pretty simple guy. And the forces of darkness are using those qualities against him. And the people who worship him, because there are people who are worshiping Donald Trump. Don't make any mistake about it. They are worshiping him as a demigod. That's all coming from the forces of darkness. They see something in him that they want. I think they're starting to respond to really Maitreya in the world, and they're putting it on Donald Trump. And the forces of darkness are using that to give him his power. I don't think that's coming from Donald Trump, to be honest. That's just my own humble opinion. Where Donald Trump fits into a biblical prophecy, like I listen to this guy, he thinks he's the Antichrist, and he definitely provides a very compelling argument. So I'm not here to say that he's wrong. I'm just here to say that I don't agree with it. But Donald Trump does fulfill a biblical prophecy in his own way, the sword of cleavage. And there's an article that Ben's Master wrote called The Creating of the Sword of Cleavage, where he talked about historical figures, past and present, that some represent the good of the nation, like, let's see, Gandhi or Martin Luther King would be two good examples, but yet were very divisive in their own way, even though they had their best interest at heart was the people. It was not for them, it was for the people, but yet they were very divisive. And then you have people like Donald Trump, who are the opposite side of the coin, that are creating a sort of cleavage in their own way, creating divisions in households, just as Jesus said, I come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword. This is the sword of cleavage, to bring, to set father against son, mother against daughter, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, I think is the verse. That is the sword of cleavage. That's the love nature of God dividing humanity up in that way, because we are different. There's energetic difference between humanities, parts of humanity. And that's what these people do. They bring out the differences in us. And some people can't even get along. I know personally friends who don't speak to other friends because of Donald Trump. Because of Donald Trump. They can no longer talk to one another anymore. Now, why is this so important? Okay, so this is where the sword of cleavage comes in. And we're going to see more and more of this until Maitreya's Day of Declaration. And then everything's going to swing back the other way very, very quickly. And humanity will become very harmonious and very synthesized and very united in a way. If you live long enough, if you live just, I'd say a few more decades, you will start to see, after Maitreya is here, you'll start to see the principle of sharing take place. You'll start to see trust amongst the nations. You'll start to see manifested justice on this planet. You'll see manifested peace on this planet. And then you might see the beginnings of manifested love. In our next lifetime, we will definitely see manifested love on this planet. That's how far to the extreme we'll go the other way. We're as divided as we are today, as bigoted as we are today, as much hatred is out there today, we will be the exact opposite very quickly. Now, the reason why we need to be divided today is because humanity must be presented with the choice. This is the generation of choice. And the choice is, do we continue on in the ways that we're doing and end all life on this planet? Because that's what's going to happen. Maitreya is going to show us what that means. He'll show us that if we continue on in the ways that we're doing with commercialization and capitalism in the way that we're doing today, we will eventually destroy all life on this planet. If we try the principle of sharing, this is the other choice. If we try the principle of sharing, it will bring about justice and trust amongst nations, bring about peace, and then we will see what it's like to have manifested love on this planet. We'll have a vision of both those futures. And then when we see that our own future is on the line, we will decide to go with the principle of sharing. That's how it is. But we can't do that unless there's a sort of cleavage. That's the whole point. So it's a necessary thing, right? Now, I wanted to read a biblical scripture, okay, not only about the force of, about the sort of cleavage, but I also wanted to read something that kind of struck me the other day. Somebody was viewing it differently. They were viewing it as somebody who talks about peace, it's actually evil or something like that. I mean, they were totally misunderstanding this verse. But listen to this verse from the eyes of love and hope, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is coming from, where is it coming from? Mark. Where is it? Let me go back. Excuse me. Hold on. This is Mark 13:7. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. Now, if you're looking at that from the eyes of the end of the world, then of course you're going to say, well, there's going to be all these wars and all these rumors of wars, and it's going to be tumultuous, and eventually it will end. The world will end. This, within a few years. This is what most people interpret this meaning. The meaning of this verse. What I think this is meaning is we're going to hear horrible things. We're going to hear about wars, which is horrible. It's the worst thing out there. Rumors of wars, but yet these things must come to pass, and it also means that the end shall not be yet. Because this isn't the end. This is just the beginning of the new time. That's what I think that means. So if you look and read, I know Mark 13 is not Revelations, but if you look at some of these verses that people think and are confirming the end times and what we're going through today, they're confirming these things that we're seeing today, which some of them are. But if you look at it from the eyes of fear, then you think that it's going to mean the destruction of humanity at some point. If you look at it through the eyes of hope and love, you'll see that even if you're hearing things like wars and rumors of wars, it's okay. All will be well. This is why Maitreya says, all will be well. All manner of things will be well. Kind of sounds similar to what he's saying here in Mark 13:7. I love you guys. Thank you very much for the questions and the comments, and I look forward to talking to you again in future videos. You guys take care. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.